The current word on the street, and a word that we've all heard before in the past in our restless dreams as we cope and grasp for another game, is that Rocksteady, or at least what's left of it, what didn't leave to go to 100-star games with Sefton Hill and Jamie Walker, is working on another Batman Arkham game. Now, I know some people collectively sighed because they said one of several things. They said, oh, great. Well, a lot of the people who used to make these games are gone, so what does that mean? Other people have said, come on, why can't we get a different character? Because obviously The Flash, it just came out that he got a game canceled for really no reason. Video about that is on my channel, Rejected Media episode, you'd probably enjoy. But either way, I love these games, and so I've seen a lot of takes coming out recently, whether it be YouTube videos or articles or things like that, about things like characters people want to see back, elements they'd want to see different. Thought today we'd take a few minutes just to do sort of a classic style Degenerate Jay video from back in the day, one that I'd like to do a little bit more of going forward, minus the bad audio quality from the past. So we're taking a look at Screen Rant because there was an author over here who is Jorge, I believe, Aguilar, sorry if I butcher your name, who actually did a pretty in-depth breakdown of characters they wanted to see back. I wanted to take a few minutes to take a look at this. I'm not going to read every bit of it because I think you should check that out yourself in the description down below if you want, but let's run through the list. Also, if you want to support this channel, we do have several other channels as well, which will be down in the description. One where I do anime videos, one where we do Let's Play style podcast type videos, one where we do things like RPG videos, and we have a Fortnite code to help support this channel. Finally, I do have a question of the day for you, which is, who would be the character that you would most want to see return in a Batman Arkham game, and when or why? So for example, if you're saying, I want the game taking place after Knight, who would you want and why? Or if you're saying, I want another Arkham Origins sequel, who would you want and why? Like, what kind of character do you want to see? The first one that they mention is actually interesting to me, which is Dick Grayson. And this plays into probably one of my biggest problems I had with the Arkham games in general, is I don't feel like the Bat family was done well. It's unfortunate that this has to be said, but it's kind of why I think that Gotham Knights is a double-edged sword when it comes to a disappointment. Gotham Knights as a game is not only just a fine game, I don't think it's bad, I just think it's okay, but also it had the opportunity to take place in this continuity and rectify this a little bit. If you had wanted to, you could have set Gotham Knights, I almost said Arkham Knight, you know, maybe 5 years after Arkham Knight. And then you could have had Jason reconciling with the Bat family. You even could have had Barbara Gordon as Batgirl still if you wanted to do the experimental surgery or procedure. I mean, to fix her back. The comics did it. It wouldn't be any more or less silly in this, especially with the technology that we see on display in the Arkham games. I mean, Batman is like a one-man army, and the stuff that even things like Stag had going on with, you know, his company, they're mind-blowing. So it's not impossible to say that characters like that could come back. And something that Jorge actually pointed out in this article is kind of funny to me in the sense that they get it. Like, one thing they point out is exactly what I was just saying about Gotham Knights. So they're saying, you know, obviously Dick Grayson is different from Bruce Wayne. He's a little more light, he's a little more fun. And also in general, you know, how would he feel about things like Batman's death, in quotations, things like the Nightfall Protocol, things like Jason Todd being back, you know, are they going to work together now or not? Like, you could have covered that in Gotham Knights if you would have just been willing to set that there. So yeah, it's like, I would love to see that. The best we really get is a couple of small throwaway lines from characters in their respective tiny DLC packs, and that's about it. And yeah, I mean, I remember being a kid and characters like Nightwing being teased for Arkham City and wondering, oh, how is this character going to play into the narrative, you know, when they had the DLC pack, when they had the whole thing with play as Nightwing. And I mean, it just turned out that they didn't really play into the narrative that much when it came to the Bat family. I know some people prefer Batman as more of a loner, but I really do think that, you know, members of the Bat family like Dick actually make Bruce feel more human. I think that they open up that side of Batman a little bit, and that would probably be my main criticism of the Arkham series in general, is just that Batman, he's never really ever been just a one-man show. There are a lot of versions of him that are more loners, But even some of those, like The Dark Knight Returns, it's like he still worked with other people when he needed to. But the Arkham Batman, we just don't really get to see a lot of those people, so I'd personally love to see Nightwing back. The one that is just an absolute no from me is the Riddler. Now here's why. I love the Riddler's inclusion in the Batman Arkham games. I actually like him in all of them. I like him before he is the Riddler in Arkham Origins. I like him as well in Arkham City, Arkham Asylum. He's probably my favorite in Asylum, where I feel like there's more of a focus on quality over quantity when it comes to his puzzles, and I really love his riddles. If you ever wanted to have him come back, I would say it should be based around puzzles more than actual, finding just the Riddler trophies. I think people have had enough of those. I think people actually had enough of them after Arkham City. So then for him to come back to Origins and Knight, for a lot of people was just overkill. I liked it, but it was overkill for a lot of people. And then you could tell as well that they didn't really know what to do with him in Knight, where he kind of became like a vehicle, pun intended, to set up even challenges like for the Batmobile. They were really struggling to figure out how to incorporate Riddler. I don't think Riddler should come back. I've said this before, but for me, if you were gonna bring someone back in a position like the Riddler, it would be someone like Clue Master. Almost in a game show type setting, or maybe even if you wanted to have it remotely. Like something I think would be really cool is to combine the best elements from the Riddler's appearances into the Clue Master, and here's why. I love the voice acting for Riddler. I think the characterization is great, but he's becoming a one-trick pony in the Arkham universe, unless you can drastically change it up. Even in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which is supposedly in the Arkham universe, they just had him there as a way to flesh out and pad out the game again, and just put in a bunch of trophies again. So for me, the best thing about Riddler was the puzzles. You could obviously do those puzzles again with Riddler, but then you'd have to ask, well, why did he just throw out his trophies idea after pushing that for like a decade? He probably wouldn't. He's very stubborn. So for me, I would think if you had the Clue Master, you actually had him doing those puzzles that the Riddler had been kind of known for in Arkham Asylum and City more, and you scale back on any kind of collectible, I feel like you could reuse this mechanic and have a different character take that place. Now that doesn't mean that Riddler can never come back. If you want to bring Riddler back, I would say instead of having him do these puzzles and trophies, which I would replace with Clue Master, maybe have him doing something like what he did with Arkham City, where he had the hostages, almost the Jigsaw level traps for the hostages. You could do something like that, either with Clue Master or Riddler, or even have them kind of at war with each other, like who's the smartest, like almost like a battle of the minds, kind of like the war of jokes and riddles in the comics, except it's almost like the war of riddles and clues, like it's trivia versus riddles, that kind of thing. I think that could be very, very interesting, and you could even have both characters in the game then, instead of only going back to Riddler and only doing a bunch of, I guess, puzzle-based collectibles again that most people other than me did not seem to enjoy. Now here's one that would actually need to come back that they bring up, which is Tim Drake. And one reason this would absolutely need to come up, and something that wasn't even mentioned in the article, is because of what happened in the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game. If you ever did a game after that, obviously I think most of us kind of wanted that game ignored, but if you did, it was heavily implied that Tim was either dead or wounded by the clone or replacement or whatever Batman. That essentially Tim had in the Batcave been severely wounded, his mask is found there with blood, and we don't really get anything more from that. Now, even if you ignore that game, whether this is set before that or it's set after that time period, but like ignoring it, or they decanonize it, which I think a lot of people are leaning towards wanting, let me know in the comments down below. And he's also a really weirdly written one, because Tim Drake, as much as I like him, I think he's pretty great in Harley Quinn's Revenge. Unfortunately, you only play as him for like, what, 2/3 of that ish? I mean, you end up playing as Batman for part of it, I believe. It's been a little while since I played through that, but I remember it expanded on him a little and told a good story for what it was. But then you had him appearing in Arkham Knight, and it was essentially the Flip of a Coin DLC pack, and it really didn't add much to him, except for the fact that they weirdly wrote him to be the love interest of Barbara Gordon. I still don't get why they did that. I keep seeing people say that Rocksteady made a mistake when researching, and that they confused that element of Tim Drake with Dick Grayson. I don't know. You can let me know what you find about that in the comments, because I didn't look that up again before talking about this. I would find that to be an interesting subject. But in general, it just kind of feels like Tim was given some of Dick Grayson's personality and story beats, but then given some of his own. And then his age is kind of different, where like now he's the one marrying Barbara Gordon. And then that's kind of confirmed to have happened with that Flip of a Coin DLC. So it all just kind of leaves me wondering why they went the way they did for Tim Drake. I mean, the guy really, really needs more fleshing out. He needs more character development, like a lot of the Bat family. Here's one I both disagree with and agree with, which is Jonathan Crane, the Scarecrow. Now here's where I disagree with it. If you are bringing a game after Arkham Knight, which I know is already a stretch for a lot of people because unfortunately Kevin Conroy is no longer with us. WB, they had time to do more with him in a lot of continuities like DCAU, Arkham, whatever. They didn't. And, mortality catches up with everybody, right? It's just, whenever I talk about it, it makes me sad. So if you're going to set a game after Arkham Knight, you're already going to have an uphill battle because of that. Like, who do you have voice Batman? Yeah, Kevin was not super controlling of the role, and I think Roger does a great job. I'm open to it, but a lot of people will not be. So you already have that hurdle. And then you have the fact that I would say Scarecrow was a big focus of Arkham Knight, but also he ended up taking the back seat a lot of the times to the other villains, whether it be the psychological manifestation of Joker, whether it be Jason himself. And yes, Scarecrow would appear monologuing and speaking about the events of the game and different things like that in Arkham Knight, or he'd make these kind of little appearances in Arkham Asylum where it's very memorable nightmare sequences. Unless you're going to do that again prior to Arkham Knight, I just don't think this works. And the reason I don't think it works is because it's kind of played out. Like, if it's after Arkham Knight where Batman literally defeats the personification of his fears entirely, in a lot of ways, in the ending, like that's the whole point, what would the point be of bringing Jonathan Crane back? Like, it's just retreading again, right? And especially if you do consider things like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League canon to a new game, well, that whole game, it gets into the fact that Batman really did become the Ghost, and he really did start using Scarecrow's fear toxin in a way, probably a dumbed down version of it that's not going to cause, irreparable damage. He started using that to fight crime, so that's something that we got into in a previous video as well, of where was Batman in the meantime? What was he doing? Before he met the Justice League in that, or prior to that game, he was actually using Scarecrow's fear toxin and kind of doing this nightmare act himself. So it's like, it wouldn't make sense to do that to him after or even before the events of Suicide Squad. I wish that I could ignore the events of those games. I know like a lot of people are like, why do you bring it up? Well, because right now it's in canon, it's in continuity. We can ignore it, we can like headcanon it out and not care, but it just depends on what is the studio going to do. Like, are they going to do that? If they did, you can kind of do whatever you want, but even then you still have the problem that the game of Arkham Knight still ends with Batman doing that. You just wouldn't have the full-on confirmation from his boss fight in Suicide Squad. So, from that perspective, if you wanted to do hallucinations and things like that, I would say both Scarecrow and Mad Hatter work for that incredibly well. I would just set it before Arkham Knight if you were going to do that. Getting into the mind of those characters where you're kind of hallucinating this stuff, or you're kind of in a psychedelic trip type area, I think is extremely interesting. I think it's some of the best parts of the Arkham games. Even from Arkham Origins, some of the stuff with Mad Hatter is the most memorable to me. So I love that stuff. I would love to see more psychological stuff with those characters. It just depends on when it's done and how. Are you doing it? And it's kind of like the Riddler. Are you just bringing it back because it's a series staple and you don't really have anything to do or say with that character? or are you bringing it back for a purpose? Now here's one that's mentioned that I really have always wanted to see more of, which is Selina Kyle. I do not understand why, when it comes to the relationship with Selina Kyle and Bruce Wayne, they played so coy and just mildly flirtatious. It's very obvious that these two care about each other, and it's weird because it feels like the most character development we get between the two of them is in something like, what, Arkham Origins Blackgate? Like where, you know, they're kind of meeting or whatever. I don't understand why there wasn't more done with her. And this is exactly how I feel about the Bat family in general, whether it be Batgirl or Nightwing or Robin or whoever. These characters around Batman in his corner are very lightly explored. And Selina is one of them. Now, I'm not sitting here like with the social justice cap on and being one of the people like, she's got to zip it up. All she was eye candy, things like that. Like, I think the way that she's used in the games works in the narrative. I just think that you can have it both ways. Like, you can have Selina Kyle, zip her down, you know, looking like an absolute, I don't know, supermodel out there. And you can also have kind of a relationship with Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle explored a little bit in a game. And that's something that I think would be really good to see for this universe. It's something I think games like the Arkham Origins trilogy-ish of games did probably, honestly, the best. You know, things like Arkham Origins, Shadow, Blackgate, kind of seeing how characters around Batman are affected by his actions and the people in his corner. It's something that I have always kind of criticized Rocksteady on not doing enough of. I really do think that they could have done more with a character like this, and I also think that her play style, it fits into the Arkham world, but it's so fluid and cat-like and kind of sensual and flirtatious in this feminine way where she moves around that I thought it was really unique. You know, and that's something I would love to see more of in a future game. Not only all of those characters in the Bat family and around Batman, but also their play styles, and seeing them actually get fleshed out and have a full repertoire of gadgets. Because pretty much whenever you play as one of these characters in the Arkham games, in the challenge maps, things like that, you just know you're at a disadvantage compared to playing as Batman, because he'll have 12 gadgets and they'll have like 2. It's very obvious that not as much detail and attention went into creating these playable characters other than Batman. And I think that if you're going to have them, you have to give them some attention. Now, one I'm going to breeze through really quick is Harley Quinn, and here's why. They need to decide what the hell they want to do with this character. This character has been all over the place. Things were teased to this character that never came to be, like the false positive pregnancy test in Arkham City. Things have been teased for this character that never came to be, like her overall importance in Arkham Knight. It seemed like in the promotional stuff that she was going to play a bigger role. She ended up not really mattering much at all. Outside of like 20 minutes of gameplay, just why was she there? It's unfortunate. And then of course as well, you go to Suicide Squad and now all of a sudden she's mostly reformed and she's not as bad, even though she helped Joker torture Jason Todd and has done a lot of very awful things in the Arkhamverse, including murdering a child. By the way, if you don't remember the whole thing in Arkham Knight, the entire matter of family, you know, which I even made a review of and talked about a while ago and went into detail on that. Well, like some of the things that Harley was complicit in that are absolutely bananas. So to have her then in Suicide Squad kill the Justice League, and it's like, well, actually she's not that bad. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? I mean, she's hot. Yeah, she's really hot. You know, like, look, I could fix her. No, but you know what I mean? Like, she's really gorgeous in the Arkham games. Like, yeah, I get the appeal of like finding her attractive physically, but she's a nutcase, and she's not even like a relatable nutcase like the DCEU Harley Quinn or the modern comics Harley Quinn, where it's like, yeah, there's some bad there, but she's like made up for a lot of that, and she's really doing her best now. It's like a switch flipped from, you know, Arkham to Suicide Squad. Why did they switch that? Why'd they do that? I don't understand. So it's like, well, what's going on? Is she actually that evil? Is she not? You know, you could even dive into the whole split personality thing, and you could do a lot with that. Like Harleen Quinzel to Harley Quinn, they have her speaking to the Harley voice and the, you know, with the Harleen voice back and forth in Arkham Knight in the playable section of her in the DLC. It's like you could lean into that and you could actually tell a pretty tragic tale of this broken character who maybe was mostly unaware of a lot of the bad stuff they were doing. Does that completely exonerate them? No, but having those two people in one body type idea would, if fleshed out better, make her a lot more sympathetic. As of right now, that idea is not heavily dived into, and so she's not actually that sympathetic in the Arkham games. So for me, it's like, what do you want to do with her? Is she going to be an absolute crazy psycho, sociopath who there's nothing redeemable about? Then you got to commit to that. Is she going to be something in the middle, where this alternate personality is what's driving it? You got to commit to that. I don't think the Arkham continuity has done a good job at all committing to what they want Harley to be. Something that is mentioned, by the way, in this article that I really agree with from Jorge here is it'd be better if they made her look like she did in the Arkham games again. Yeah, I agree completely. Like, her face was fine in the Suicide Squad game, but it was such an about face, pun intended again, for her looks. And it was very clearly, in my opinion, I would say motivated by like a change in the video game industry, especially around Rocksteady, where they had been accused of all this sexual misconduct. So all of a sudden, like, the fact that they had all of their female characters with, kind of their tits out almost and showing booty and stuff. Like, look, most men and women like that stuff. I mean, you even ask women, a lot of them do like that stuff. They like aesthetically pleasing characters, but it was a bad look for Rocksteady after they got accused of all this sexual misconduct. So it's very obvious that they changed the way some of these characters looked because of that, not actually because it fit the character. It didn't fit Harley. So yeah, it's like, bring back the original character design. I completely agree. The next one is one I agree with, and I've been kind of waiting to see what happened to this character for a while, which is Azrael. So it's like, what happened to Michael after Arkham Knight? And obviously you have a decision there. I personally think the more canon one is him, actually going after the Order and trying to break free of that control. But that said, what happens to him? Like, where is he now? And even when it comes down to it, you could do something with the original Azrael, Jean-Paul Valley. You actually have a Batman suit inspired by him in the PS3 version of the game, also in the PC version if you add it in via mods, which you should if you have the PC version. It's pretty easy to do. It's a fun suit. I love it. So it's like, where is Azrael? Either one. What happened with that? Obviously, you have a little bit of a different story when it comes to Batman himself. And when you're going with the Michael Lane angle instead of the Jean-Paul angle, it's kind of like Michael was taking a little bit of the Jean-Paul angle from the comics, but then it didn't go full Nightfall or anything like that. And Michael was more moral, I would say, and more in control of himself. Ironically, despite being almost, brainwashed and mind controlled in a way. So I'm kind of wondering, like, either Azrael, either one. You could introduce the original one, you could have a whole thing with that, but then you also have the problem of, why didn't Batman recognize the name Azrael when you get to Arkham City? So maybe you can't do that. I'm not really sure. I think either way, though, Azrael is just an interesting character, regardless of the version of him. The Calendar Man. Why is Julian Day not more used? It's interesting because his crimes are linked to holidays, and obviously if you go visit him in Arkham City, you can visit him during various holidays, and it plays a lot into his story, where you get all of these different little Easter eggs or storylines from him that actually, fill in his backstory. So it kind of makes you wonder, especially because Julian Day talks a bit about Batman stopping his plans before, why we never got to see that. I mean, maybe it's because you'd have to set up those different stories on an actual holiday, but then again, why couldn't you? Arkham Knight was a lot of it kind of around Halloween. Arkham Origins, a lot of it was around Christmas. It's like, why couldn't you do that? Why couldn't you have him be a main villain or a main player doing these grisly killings or grisly crimes on a holiday? I think that would actually test the detective skills of Batman, something that the Arkham Origins-ish trilogy, again, like I said before, does best. Arkham Origins itself, it does a very good job of it. Shadow did a good job with it. it kind of just makes me wish that they would do more with it. Man-Bat. Man-Bat is one I could go either way on. I'm almost like leaving him out there in the world as a mystery could be more entertaining than bringing him back. And he played a pretty big role in the side missions of Arkham Knight. So I'm kind of hesitant on it. I'm like, well, you know, him just being out there is pretty cool. You know, like, when will he pop up next? What do you do? It's kind of like the way that they left Hush, I can't speak, at the end of Arkham City. And so, you know, how do you follow that up? Sometimes it's actually best to not follow something up. Like, a lot of times I think you can, and a lot of times it can be very good. But there are times where it's like, if you have nothing good to do with the character, maybe you leave it alone. Maybe the mystery of him being out there, where is he? What is he up to? What is he doing? Could actually be more interesting than the solution and coming full circle of bringing him back. That's kind of where I'm hesitant on it, especially after what happened with Hush, which unfortunately it seems the plans actually of Paul Dini were to bring Hush back in a more major role. We never really learned more than that. I don't know why Paul has never gone in detail on that in the past. He's kind of a private man though, and it didn't really seem like the split over Arkham Knight was that amicable. It seemed like they just kind of cut him out of it on the WB and Rocksteady side. So it's unfortunate, but that kind of thing has made me, you know, more hesitant at bringing certain characters back in this universe. The final one is just kind of a no-brainer. I wouldn't have ended the article on this one personally, but that's just me, which is Commissioner Gordon. And the reason I say that is just because it's like, what game wouldn't happen without Commissioner Gordon? Now, here's how I would bring back Commissioner Gordon, because they talk about him being the mayor in this and things like that. If I were going to bring back Commissioner Gordon, other than a game before Night, I would want a game set up in the time of the Dark Knight Returns type era. Maybe you have Batman and some of the Bat family is still around, so maybe it's a little less lonely than that era. But maybe you have an older Dick Grayson either operating still as, you know, a Nightwing or as something else. Although weirdly, Tim Drake became Nightwing in Suicide Squad. So I don't really know what's up with that. Maybe he's just his own superhero. Who knows? But, you know, maybe you have a couple of those older characters still around. You have Bruce Wayne, he's getting really up there, and it's kind of his last time to suit up and take care of business. Maybe with a younger protege like Carrie, maybe with an older protege or older partner still around. And you could have a big focus of this be essentially Jim Gordon leaving office or leaving his control of the city behind. Like, he's no longer a commissioner, he's no longer the mayor, like at the end of Arkham Knight. Now Jim Gordon is just gone, like he's retired. And so it's like, what happens to Batman? You know, in The Dark Knight Returns, a big part of that is actually that Batman is now wanted by the police again because he doesn't have anyone in his corner on the police or on essentially in politics in Gotham City protecting him like Jim Gordon could. So that would be a very interesting way to bring Jim Gordon back. However, the way that you bring him back would mostly rely on him leaving. So it's like, it's kind of difficult to do that at the same time. But I don't know, that's just kind of my idea. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments down below on what characters you would want to see return to the Batman Arkham series and why. If you enjoyed this video, you want to leave a like, subscribe, let me know what you think in those comments. There is going to be a link in the description actually leading to the original article that you can read. I think it is well written. I think it's good. I've criticized a lot of video game journalism, so when something is well written, I think it's worth taking a look at and worth actually giving some support to. We also do have several other channels in the description, like I said earlier in the video. Those go to help us. A Fortnite code, which helps our channel a lot. And finally, we do also have a store, CosmoBunny.shop, where you can buy coasters, keychains, trays, and more from recycled comic book, manga, magazine, and other paper. These are from damaged books that cannot be sold. What we do is we take them, we turn them into new art transformatively for your home, and we recycle the rest. Code DJAY123 gets you 10% off your first purchase. And my wife Jill, who runs this store, who does a very lovely job, actually makes handmade beaded jewelry over there as well. And it's a store that I think has not been getting a lot of attention recently. I know I shouted out, but I think it's really high quality stuff. We're continuing to add more new products. Actually, she just made a new batch that she's been working on as well. So lots of fun stuff will be coming up over there. We hope you have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, stay shui.